Yo, what's going on, YouTube? And welcome back to Goal Line Hockey. It's your boy Kevin Forte, and today we are taking a look, yes, again, at the Vancouver Canucks. Now, it's been a pretty interesting start to the season, right, for the Canucks. We already blasted the Canucks the other day in my other video, but today is going to be a little bit more of, well, what do they do next? And I'm trying to think of realistic trade scenarios here, and I named 3 different Canuck players that could be on the chopping block. And those 3 players are a defenseman and 2 forwards. So obviously on defense, it's Oliver Ekman-Larsson. And this one's going to be more difficult to do during the regular season, but I was able to find a trade partner, and we'll talk about that. Up front, we have 2 forwards. You guys probably know those guys. We've already talked about them at really infinitum here over the past week or two. And they are Brock Besser and Bo Horvat. So we're going to start off with my trade proposal for Oliver Ekman-Larsson. And of course, guys, I want your mock trades down in the comment section down below. And I might be posting a video here over the next couple of days. If I get enough mock trade scenarios to kind of discuss, I might even make an entire video on that, and your mock trade might get in there as well. So, Oliver Ekman-Larsson, we have him going to the Eastern Conference in this trade, and I have him going, hear me out, to the Buffalo Sabres. So, Oliver Ekman-Larsson going to the Buffalo Sabres with 15% more of his salary retained by the Vancouver Canucks. And they also will be getting a second-round pick. So here's the actual trade. Now here's the other thing that is kind of an issue. And that is Oliver Ekman-Larsson would have to move his full no-movement clause. And there's no guarantee that he will do that. So that is something to consider as well. Again, you're kind of pulling for strings here, but if you saw him on the idea that maybe he wants to play with Owen Power and playing with the Buffalo Sabres, that's a pretty good hockey team, and maybe they're not a playoff team quite yet. You had a guy like Oliver Ekman-Larsson who quietly has 14 points in 29 games as a defenseman. That's really not too bad, and it makes it a little bit easier to stomach if you're a Sabres fan looking at that contract, because that is really the big problem with Oliver Ekman-Larsson. He has a really bad contract. And it's one of those things that with so much time left on it, I think it ends in 2026 or 2027. I mean, that's a couple years from now. That's at least 3 or 4 more seasons of Oliver Ekman-Larsson. Now, again, with his current salary retained by Arizona and another 15% retained here from Vancouver, maybe that contract doesn't look so bad to the Buffalo Sabres as a little bit more appetizing. So the actual trade itself, Vancouver gives up Oliver Ekman-Larsson. And again, because of the salary involved, you're helping the Canucks in this scenario. Vancouver gives up Oliver Ekman-Larsson and a 3rd-round pick to the Buffalo Sabres for only a 2nd-round pick. Now, the thing for Buffalo is one of those teams that may be more willing to give up a 2nd-round pick, as they have 4 2nd-round picks in the 2023 NHL Draft, so that may be a little bit more feasible. Again, you're still asking for a lot. Again, this is an Oliver Ekman-Larsson that is likely going to get bought out by the Canucks next summer. That is my prediction still. But if there is a team that could be interested, has the money to get it done, has the draft capital where they could say, all right, if we're giving up a 2nd-round, if we're giving up a 3rd-round pick, it's really not that bad. And in this scenario, Buffalo actually gets another 2nd-round pick. So, Buffalo gives up their 2nd-round pick. Got it. So that's kind of what you're looking at here. And this is the one I'm the least confident in, because ultimately I think Oliver Ekman-Larsson gets bought out next summer. But it is a trade proposal that is somewhat feasible. Again, the Buffalo Sabres, they're going to have a lot of contracts coming up over the next couple of years, so they got to be careful with how they spend their money. Do you want to invest the next 3 or 4 years in an aging defenseman from Vancouver. I just don't think that's necessarily their best bet, but that's the best I could come up with. So that just shows you how difficult it's going to be if the Canucks do end up deciding to trade Oliver Ekman-Larsson. And there's been rumors that they're looking for him to waive his no-movement clause and kind of asking him and trying to figure that out. But honestly, if he doesn't want to go somewhere and nobody wants him, nothing's going to materialize. Moving on to the captain, Bo Horvat. Now, we had an interesting quote the other day when he was asked about this situation. And this is a statement from Bo Horvat through the team. Vancouver Canucks captain Bo Horvat released the following statement today. In quote, "I am focused on this season and playing for the Vancouver Canucks, helping the team in any way I can. I will not have any further comments this year about my future." And that was on December 13th on Twitter from Mr. Bo Horvat. So that's kind of what we're looking at there. So he's likely going to get traded. And the team we've been hearing a lot about, which makes a lot of sense, is the Colorado Avalanche. Now here's the thing with the Avalanche. The Avalanche have no draft picks, no draft capital past the first round over the next 3 years. It is brutal. They don't have their own second round pick and third round pick the next 2 seasons, and they don't have their own fourth round pick either this year. So this coming draft, Colorado doesn't have their own second, third, or fourth round pick. So it's going to be difficult for the Avs. If they do anything other than their first round pick, they will have a hard time making a move unless it involves players already on the roster or potential prospects and rookies. So that's kind of what you're looking at. So we had to kind of mess with that a little bit, but it didn't really turn out to be that big of a hurdle because the actual deal itself is pretty simplistic. The Vancouver Canucks give up Bo Horvat to the Colorado Avalanche. In exchange, the Colorado Avalanche give up this year's first-round pick and a conditional 2024 first-round pick. So it's 2 first-round picks for Bo Horvat. Now here's the thing. This can be a conditional second pick. Now the problem is the Avalanche, like I said, do not have a second or third-round pick either this year or next year. So the condition is this, and we've been seeing this a lot more recently, especially for rental players. If Bo Horvat re-signs with the Colorado Avalanche this coming season, this summer, well, then you have a first-round pick in 2024. If we see a scenario where Bo Horvat hits the free agent market this summer, and again, it kind of makes it more interesting for the Avalanche because if they had the $9 million to sign Horvat this summer, why didn't they have the $9 million last summer to keep Nazem Kadri? Again, it kind of makes you wonder, were they really that sold on Kadri, or are they just really that big on getting Horvat as a free agent, or potentially letting him walk to free agency and keeping him as a rental this year? Colorado is one of those teams that can actually do that. Now, the problem is with this trade, right? So that makes sense. I think that's a fair trade, right? Vancouver has the potential of getting 2 first-round picks for this guy. And let's just say that conditional pick if he doesn't re-sign, in 2025, let's say Vancouver gets a second-round pick from Colorado. And the only problem is Colorado, that is their next second-round pick. So they don't have a first or second-round pick for the next 2 drafts. And it's even worse than that. They don't have, after this trade, Colorado wouldn't have their own first, second, third, or fourth round pick this year. And next year, they wouldn't have their own first, second, or third, and with the condition of potentially losing their second round pick in 2025. So Colorado has to be sold on Bo Horvat to make this deal work. They're going to have to move money out in another trade. So that's another factor that I'm not putting in here because I think straight up the value just wouldn't work. But I do have a scenario here where, again, if Colorado is able to move out just a little bit more money, they would be able to fit Horvat's money at 5.25 for the remainder of this season on the cap hit this year for the Avalanche. Now, again, you're looking at an Avalanche team, new general manager, maybe trying to make a splash, trying to make his kind of his calling to this team. You know, this is a Joe Sakic team. So maybe he's going to say to himself, listen, I want my legacy. I want my stamp on this organization. And maybe he goes out and makes a move. And I'm trying to find who that guy is. Chris McFarland. That's right. Chris McFarland, the new general manager, taking over Joe Sakic. So Chris McFarland might sit there and say, yeah, I want my stamp on this team. And a Bo Horvat trade here would be able to do that for me. So that's what we've got. So Oliver Ekman-Larsson to Buffalo and Bo Horvat to the Colorado Avalanche. So, with those two out of the way, let's get to Brock Boeser. Now, Brock Boeser is a very interesting character. As last night, I was watching the Calgary Flames game, and all of a sudden they mentioned, just so happened to mention, that Brock Boeser was a healthy scratch, not bug-related, if you get what I'm saying there. So Brock Boeser scratched. Now that definitely leaves a little bit more speculation as to maybe how soon Boeser could potentially get traded. Obviously, there is reason to believe here by the end of this year we could see a Boeser trade. That would be within the next 2 weeks. There's been some talks between the Canucks management and maybe some other GMs about what's potentially there. And I think one team to keep an eye out here is the Boston Bruins. The Bruins have not been shy about looking to add more scoring depth to their roster. They've got a pretty good blue line. Maybe adding another scoring player alongside Taylor Hall and Jake DeBrusk and some of the other guys there. That might be a really good asset here for the Bruins, and it might come at a pretty cheap cost. So I have Brock Boeser going to the Boston Bruins. In exchange, the Boston Bruins give up to the Vancouver Canucks their own 2023 and 2024 third-round draft picks. So 2 third-round picks for Brock Boeser. So it's not necessarily the package that I think Canucks fans would be happy about, but the reality is they want to move out that money as soon as possible in Vancouver. And I think the possibility of trading Boeser very soon is very much on the table. And I think Vancouver is still going to try and throw another offer here at Bo Horvat, and if they can move Boeser's money, that might allow them to get a little bit closer to the money he wants. At the end of the day, I really think Horvat wants to just test the free agency market at this point and doesn't want to tell Vancouver, give them any sort of commitment at this point. And you can't really blame him for that. You know, he's playing really well this season. He's got over 20 goals this season. He's got 10 power play goals. I mean, Bo Horvat is playing extremely well on this Canucks team. So he's betting on himself, and he's going to try and get closer to that $9.5 million annual average salary this summer if he keeps playing the way he is. And there are teams reportedly that are willing to give up that price. Another quick one here just to end off the video. Luke Schenn, I think, is going to be a really interesting asset here for the Vancouver Canucks. I think he could end up going to Nashville for a second-round pick. I think Luke Schenn is one of those guys that, Nashville, I'm making an entire video about this, but I think Nashville is looking to add another big defenseman to play with Dante Fabro, one of their young up-and-coming defensemen there in Nashville. And I think Vancouver could get a pretty nice return for Luke Schenn. Potentially a second, maybe even a third-round pick or a mid-level prospect. I think the Canucks would be able to sort of turn the tide on this team a little bit, adding some prospects back into the system, adding some more draft capital, saving a little bit of money, right, with Luke Schenn going out the door. I think this is a really good opportunity for the Canucks to fix some of the issues that have been lingering for this team over the last 2 or 3 years. It's going to be ugly. You're going to have to rip the Band-Aid off pretty quickly here with guys like Boeser and Horvat, and maybe even Luke Schenn as well, but we'll see how things go. Let me know what you guys think down below. Leave some mock trades that you think could potentially happen here before this year's NHL trade deadline, specifically for the Vancouver Canucks, but for any other teams around the National Hockey League. Guys, let me know down below what you think. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you again next time.